Very good evening, friends. Meeting again in the session of philosophy, Stuart Close Philosophy, and chapter number 13. That is the homeopathic posology. Many aspects of posology we have discussed up till now, and we are there on the part of choosing the right dose. And while choosing the dose, he has explained that there are 5 points one has to take into consideration. The first is the susceptibility of the patient. The second important point is the seat of action of the seat of disease, exactly where it has been situated. The third is the nature and intensity of the disease. The number fourth point, which is very important, is the stage and duration of the disease. And last point, which Stuart Close has brilliantly added, is the what the previous treatment patient have consumed, because of which the susceptibility might get hampered. And these are things on the basis of which he tried to explain that these are the points which one has to take into consideration. And while explaining that, he has started explaining the first point, that is susceptibility of the patient, and he explains the in detail what is how to judge the susceptibility and how it plays a role in the selection of the potency. This susceptibility is nothing but an inherent capacity of the human being to react to an external stimuli. And this we can judge on many factors. How the patient presents. Basically, it is very important thing that how the patient presents to you, that matters a lot. So 4 points which he has explained over there, the 6 points which he has mentioned over there, the first is the age, the second is the temperament, the third is constitution, the habits, then fifth is the character of disease, and last point which he has again added is different one, that is the environment. So the susceptibility gets modified because of those six entities, out of which the first one he started explaining on page number 194. We have finished up to that. Let us start with the factors modifying the susceptibility of the patient. And first point he explains over there is susceptibility is modified by age. Generally speaking, susceptibility is greatest in children and young, vigorous persons and diminishes with age. Children are particularly sensitive during development, and the most sensitive organs are those which are being developed. Therefore, medicines, the medicines which have peculiar affinity for those organs should be given in the medium or higher potencies. So, if susceptibility is high, the potency should be high, but in infrequent doses. This is the rule, and generally in the very young persons or in the infants, in the children, the susceptibility is always called to be high. In case of old persons, the susceptibility gets hampered and it becomes less. So generally, the old peoples, they suffer from chronic disorders than the very acute disorders. Susceptibility, second point which he explains, susceptibility is modified by constitution and temperament. The higher potencies are best adapted to sensitive persons of nervous, sanguine or choleric temperament, to intelligent, intellectual persons, quick to act and react, to jealous and impulsive persons. So susceptibility is always high in such types of personality. Susceptibility is always high where the sanguine temperament is there, bloody temperament, the nervous temperament is there, or bilious temperament is there, or which is also called as choleric temperament is there. The persons which are intellectually keen, very intelligent, very sensitive, the susceptibility always remains to be high. And those requires generally higher potency. Lower potencies and larger and more frequent doses corresponds better to torpid and phlegmatic individuals, dull of comprehension and slow to act, to coarse fibered, sluggish individuals of gross habits, to those who possesses great muscular power but who require powerful stimulus to excite them. Such persons can take with seeming impunity large amounts of stimulants like whiskey and show little effect on it. When ill, they often require low potencies or even sometimes the material doses. So those persons who are phlegmatic, the temperament is phlegmatic. Phlegmatic temperament is slow, sluggish, dull. In such types of personalities, the susceptibility always remains to be low. And if susceptibility is low, it is your duty to arouse susceptibility by giving or repeating the medicine in low potencies, and till the susceptibility gets aroused, you have to repeat that. So second factor which he explained over there is the constitution and temperament. Third factor which he explains, susceptibility is modified by habits and environment. It is increased by intellectual occupation, by excitement of imagination, emotions, by sedentary occupations, by long sleep, by an effeminate life. Such persons requires high potency. So wherever there is an excitement, wherever there is excitement, the susceptibility is always high. Wherever there is dullness, sluggishness, slowness, the susceptibility is always low. So things which are related, which excites temporarily, always produces high susceptibility. But in secondary action, whenever the habits are there, like alcohol, tobacco, stimulants, in secondary action, when they becomes dull, the susceptibility also gets lowered. Same is true with the environment. Environment also plays very vital role in the susceptibility, because as if the environment is full of enthusiasm, good environment is there, you get excited, definitely your susceptibility is high. But if environment is absolutely dull, then you also become dull. So susceptibility is definitely modified by the environmental factors. And last point, which he explains over there, susceptibility is modified by pathological conditions. In certain terminal conditions, the power of organism to react even to the indicated homeopathic remedy may become so low that only material doses can arouse it. A common example of this is seen in certain terminal conditions of valvular heart disease, where digitalis is indicated remedy, but no effect is produced by any potency. The patient will respond, however, to tangible doses of the pure tincture or fresh infusion of digitalis, and sometimes make a good recovery from the condition that seems hopeless. Although such doses, judged only on by their amount, might be regarded as physiological or pathogenetic doses. The nature of reaction of such cases is clearly not pathogenic but dynamic and curative, as many have witnessed. The form of reaction complies perfectly with the requirement of the cure as to the order and directions of disappearance of symptoms and nature of the result. So, pathological condition also defines the susceptibility of the human being. If the patient who has become in the terminal ill case, there is absolutely a cardiac failure is there, circulatory failure is there because of old age, and patient is having very thready big pulse and he requires stimulation. You give the digitalis in potencies, it never works because his susceptibility is not that much good to react to that situation. Here, the patient will require a stimulus which will be in material form, tangible form. So digitalis in mother tincture form definitely stimulates the heart, and then patient starts getting a good pulse and he revives. So it depends upon situation for whom you have to utilize your remedy, and you have to judge again the susceptibility. So disorders are important entities on the basis of which you can judge the susceptibility. Quantity alone does not constitute a pathogenetic dose. Quality, proportionality, and susceptibility of the patient are also the factor. So, quantity is not only the factor on the basis of which you can uh, expect the reactions. It depends upon three important points. One is the quality. So, what exactly the quality of medicine is there? In quality means in which potency you are giving, whether you are giving mother tincture, whether you are giving in low centesimal or then 30 or 200 or high. So like that, you go on thinking. Proportionality. Proportionality means which scale which you are choosing. Lastly, the susceptibility of the patient is also another factor. What would be large, injurious, and perhaps dangerous dose for highly susceptible patient? Would have no effect whatever upon one whose power to react was very low by reason of existence of gross pathological lesions or of long existent exhausting chronic disease or much previous treatment. It is solely a question of approximating the quality and the quantity of dose to the grade or plane of disease according to the law of similar. So here he explains those persons who are having pathological changes and who reacts in a very slow manner and doesn't have a capacity to react in strongly manner, definitely have low susceptible states, will require low potency. You cannot think of higher potency strengths in such types of cases. If the grade of disease is low and the power of the reaction is low, the remedy must be given low. Underline this. This is very important. If the grade of the disease is low, the power of reaction is low, the remedy must be given low. Thus, we find in such cases that symptoms of the patient are usually of low order, common pathological symptoms, organ symptoms, gross terminal symptoms, symptoms that correspond to the effects of crude drugs in massive toxic doses. The finer shadings of the symptoms belonging to the acute conditions in vigorous sensitive patients do not appear. So, in such types of patient, you never get fine symptoms, which differentiates one remedy from another remedy. Here you get only such types of symptoms which are very gross, pathological, superficial, which are related with the diagnosis. And this is what he explains over there. Thus, we find in such cases that symptoms of the patient are usually low order and common pathological organ symptoms, gross terminal symptoms, symptoms that corresponds to the effects of crude drugs in massive toxic doses. The finer shading of the symptoms belonging to the acute conditions in vigorous sensitive patients do not appear. Potentiated medicines will not act. The case has been passed beyond the stage and finer symptoms with it. Yet the symptoms remains an almost hopeless condition. They represent are still within the scope of homeopathic law and they sometimes yield to its power when the related law of posology is rightly understood and applied. So once you understand these things exactly, that if the patient state is dull, sluggish, with gross pathological entities, then you definitely understand that susceptibility is definitely low. And if susceptibility is low, definitely requires a low potency or even a material form medicine. So once you understand the concepts clearly, then it becomes very simple to judge the potency. And this is what he has tried to explain, and he's explaining it in such a manner that everyone who reads this thoroughly understands exactly what type of dose or what type of potency one should follow. So-called pathological symptoms, when they exist alone, are significant and characteristic in their way and may be as clearly indicative of a remedy, homeopathically, as the earlier finer grades of symptoms. Whether they are useful to the homeopathic prescriber or not depends upon existence of similar symptoms in Matra Medica. We can only prescribe for symptoms which have counterpart in the Matra Medica. From the records of poisonings, overdosing, or some extreme provings, as well as from clinical experience, we have knowledge of some drugs whose symptoms, thus derived, correspond very closely to the class of pathological symptoms under discussion. In the list of such drugs, we may find one which fits our case. If that is not possible, a study of the early symptoms from the history of the case, if they can be elicited, may lead directly or by analogy to the remedy needed. When case has reached to a stage where none but gross pathological or organ symptoms are present, it is usually incurable, but it is not necessarily beyond the help of medicine homeopathically selected. Even if no results follow, the use of ordinary small doses or potentiated medicine. So it depends what type of disease patient is suffering from. Most important thing is that if the patient's condition is pathological, gross pathological, then definitely the susceptibility is low and reactions are sluggish and patient requires low potency. But before developing the pathology or before developing a tangible pathology, if there happens many functional symptoms, then you can judge that patient is still having good susceptibility and patient might require high potency or at least moderate potency. So the he is explaining all pros and cons regarding the selection of the potency, and that's why he explains in italics. This is very important. In the terminal condition, therefore, when the patient does not react to well-selected medicine, not to the intercurrent reaction remedies given in potentized form or and small doses, resort to the crude drug and increase the dose to the point of reaction. So if patient is not showing any reaction to the dynamic dose, then in such types of cases where gross pathology or terminal case is there, then you must use the crude drug, and it definitely, with the help of which it definitely reacts. When reasonably sure of the remedy given in the given the tincture, when reasonably sure of the remedy, give the tincture or low trituration, first in moderate, then in increasing doses until the doses is found into which the patient will react. Even if it be maximum dose as set down in the books, the maximum dose may be the minimum dose necessary to bring about reaction sometimes. It takes more power to drive an automobile up the hill than it does on the level. If the hill is very steep, the driver may have to go backward to the road, to on the road a ways and take a running start in order to gain the momentum enough to carry him up. When he gets the top of the hill, he can shut off power and coast down to the other side. That is what the homeopathic medicine prescriber has to do sometime in kind of cases under the discussion. He is giving, making it more simplified that if you know that patient, if you want to go high, it is always better. If you are not sure about the remedy, let us go back, start with low and gradually go up. If you are damn sure about the remedy, yes, this is patient's remedy and perfection or perfect simillimum is there, then it is always better to go for high directly also. But sometimes, if you are not damn sure regarding the remedy, then it is time to go back, start with low and gradually ascend. So these are points which he is explaining and making it more and more clear with the help of simple examples. This does not in least degree invalidate or nor violate the principle of minimum dose in such cases. The principle of similia is applied in selection of both remedy and dose is eternally and universally true. It is as true in terminal conditions, in chronic diseases marked by the gross pathological lesions and symptoms as it is in any other kind of case. The homeopathic physician fails and falls short of his injury if, as such a crisis, he throws up his hands and lets his patient die or pass on into other hands, and if he weakly yields, abandons the principle of similia and resorts to the routine measures of allopathic practice based upon theoretical assumptions. Occasionally, an allopathic physician is called in who gives so-called physiological doses of the some common drug and restores the patient. He merely does what the homeopathic physician should have the discernment or common sense to do, namely, give the drug that is really homeopathic to the case, but give it in stronger doses required at that stage of the case to excite the curative reaction. He does what the homeopathic physician is perhaps too timid, too ignorant, and too prejudiced to do. Result: the allopath gets the honor and family and the emolument. The homeopath gets the laugh, and homeopathy gets the black eye. The occasional success of allopathic physician in such cases are nearly always accomplished with the drugs which are essentially, although crudely, homeopathic. The homeopath who habitually uses high potencies is apt to forget and overlook the fact that a terminal case may reach to the point where symptoms calls for material doses because the susceptibility is so low that it will react to no other but will react to them. So he is explaining very simple manner. If the terminal cases are there, the pathologies are gross, then definitely you have to give the remedy in very, very low potency, many times in mother tincture also. Because if you don't give that, and patient never gets results with your potentized remedy. The patient runs away to the allopathic doctor and who chooses the same remedy. This happens more commonly with the digitalis. This happens more commonly with the colchicum also. And in such types of cases, such thing can happen and the allopath gets on. So you must think prior that what potency or what exactly the medicine in which quantity patient will going to require, whether he require potentized medicines or whether he requires the dynamic medicine, material medicine. If he is able to find it out that difference, then it becomes rather simple to show the results even in terminal cases and win the battle. So he is explaining this concept very clearly, and then he further says such a case occurred in practice of the writer. It was a case of valvular heart disease of many years standing, which had reached the stage of fibrillation. In a previous crisis, it had responded to potentiated medicine. In this instance, however, potentiated medicines selected on the greatest care had no effect. An effort was made to arouse the dormant reactivity with the intercurrent remedies, also in high potency. Lauroceraceus, carbovage, tuberculinum, medorinum were given as recommended by homeopathic authority. All efforts have failed and case rapidly progressed towards the dissolution. The tachycardia, the arrhythmia, the edema, the ascites, the hydrothorax, the passive congestion of the brain and liver, delirium, suppression of urine, coma, foretold the rapid approach of the end. For a period over 3 weeks, the symptoms had positively and unmistakably demanded digitalis, but doses ranging from 40,000 down to the drop doses of tincture produced no favorable change. At this point, by advice of an eminent allopathic specialist who was called in at a request of the family, full doses of the special preparation of digitalis and salt-free liquid diet were given. Within 36 hours of the patient was passing over hundreds ounces of urine in 24 hours. Brain, lungs, and liver rapidly cleared up, and case which was appeared absolutely hopeless progressed steadily to good recovery. The action of digitalis was clearly curative. No pathogenetic symptoms of any kind appeared, for the copious urine has distinctly curative symptoms. Only 6 doses of drugs were given at intervals of 12 hours, and it was discontinued as soon as its full therapeutic action was established. So he's explaining exactly that according to the situation, you have to select the potency and you have to go ahead. If you select it properly, then definitely it works. If you don't select it properly, then definitely it never works. So whenever it has been needed in material doses, it is a need of the time and you have to give it. If you don't give it, you never get the results. And then he says, about 1 month later, it was necessary to repeat the medication in smaller doses few times for slight return of some symptoms due to the overexertion. The patient was not cured in the sense that his structural damage hurt walls were resorted restored. For that is an impossibility, but the action of indicated drug was curative in its nature as far as it was possible to go. His life was saved and prolonged, and he was restored to measure restored to measure a comfort and usefulness when otherwise he would have died. Digitalis in material doses was homeopathic to this condition, symptomatically and pathologically, and not other drug could take its place at this stage of the disease. No other medicine of any kind was given. So he has given very nice illustration of the digitalis case, and he explained over there the patient was in a terminal phase and was asking for digitalis in crude form in larger doses. But unfortunately, when it was not given, the allopath was called and he has given same medicine in therapeutic doses, more stronger, larger doses. It worked and removed whole congestion over there and patient survived. So this can happen if we don't know exactly the potency problem. And that's why he has given maximum time to explain the potency So we have finished, I think today we have finished 6th lecture on the posology, but still there are many pages yet to go with this chapter. So that's all for today. Tomorrow we'll meet at the same time with the next part of the posology. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Have a good night.